Say who you are. You're BTK.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining criminals who remained free for decades. We're only including those perpetrators who've been caught, and we're avoiding Hollywood celebrities since we have that list already.
Our court does find Mr. D'Angelo guilty, murder in the first degree.
The Grim Sleeper.
The serial killer known as the Grim Sleeper died in prison over the weekend. Lonnie Franklin Jr. was convicted of murdering 10 women, but suspected of killing so many more.
Active initially in the 1980s, the Grim Sleeper earned his moniker from the extended break he took between 1988 and the early 2000s. Real name Lonnie Franklin Jr., the Sleeper took his first confirmed victim in 1984. He then claimed a further 9 lives, with his final murder occurring on September 11, 1988. He did attack a 30-year-old woman the following November, but she survived.
Shepard says the LAPD didn't have the manpower nor the technology at the time to solve the multiple murders.
Perhaps fearing the repercussions of her survival, the Sleeper lay dormant for over a decade, his next victim likely being 43-year-old Georgia Mae Thomas on December 28, 2000. It wasn't until the advent of DNA testing that Franklin was considered a suspect, and he was finally arrested in 2010, 26 years after taking his first victim.
In the end, he was caught. That's the best part.
John Paul. It's rare that a killer turns themselves in. It's even rarer that they do so after 40 years.
Wasn't there. And she wasn't there the next morning, or the next 40 years.
Back on June 6, 1980, 42-year-old Anthony Bird was found bound, beaten, and killed in his West London apartment. Police were called after he failed to turn up for work, and they knocked his door down with a sledgehammer, finding the dead body. Fast forward to 2021, when 61-year-old John Paul walked into a Hammersmith police station and confessed to the decades-old crime.
Who murdered someone?
Me.
You murdered someone?
Yes.
Did you?
He arrived at 9:38 a.m. and was arrested by 3:35 that afternoon. Paul's fingerprints matched those taken from the crime scene, ending the 40-year-old cold case on a rather unpredictable note.
Okay, who did you murder?
A man.
Thomas Cass.
After the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit began a reinvestigation of the case in 2013, newly tested fingerprints evidence led them to believe Thomas Cass of Orleans, Vermont, shot and killed Delano when Cass was 20.
It was the morning of September 1st, 1966, and retired Navy veteran Everett Delano was working in Sanborn's garage. That's when a thief walked in, shot Delano 3 times in the head, and fled with $100 in cash. The case was never solved, and it eventually became New Hampshire's oldest cold case. It was quite literally forgotten by the police, but a cold case unit received a call from Delano's family in 2013, hoping for some kind of progress. The authorities quickly looked into the file and found an old fingerprint that investigators had lifted from the scene. They matched it to one Thomas Cass.
That's our scumbag! We got him, Jack. We found him.
Authorities informed Cass about the match in 2014, and he soon after took his own life.
Police say he will not be charged because he is deceased.
Joseph George Southerland.
4 decades after Susan Tice and Aaron Gilmore were brutally murdered, an admission in court. 61-year-old Joseph George Southerland of Moosonee pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder.
Back in 1983, Toronto was hit with a series of grisly murders. In August, 45-year-old Susan Tice was fatally stabbed in her Bickford Park apartment. 4 months later, 22-year-old Aaron Gilmore was found stabbed in her Yorkville apartment, which was located near Tice's. Both victims were found by family members, and both had been assaulted. The murders went unsolved for decades, but advances in DNA testing confirmed that they were slain by the same person.
It was in the year 2000 that detectives were able to link the 2 murders of one unknown suspect thanks to DNA left at the scenes.
However, it wasn't until 2019 that investigators used genetic genealogy to trace the DNA to 5 brothers.
Genealogy's like fishing. You never know how long it's going to take you to catch a fish.
After eliminating 4 from contention, they finally found Joseph George Southerland, who pleaded guilty to the killings in 2023, 40 years after they occurred. Glen Samuel McCurley.
After almost half a century, think about that. Time and evidence caught up with a killer today.
We move from the north to the south, with this crime occurring in Fort Worth, Texas in 1974. 17-year-old Carla Walker was in a car with her boyfriend Rodney McCoy when the door suddenly burst open and the couple was attacked.
And the car door yanked up.
McCoy was knocked unconscious and Walker was kidnapped. 3 days later, her body was found in a culvert. The case quickly went cold and remained as such for the next 46 years.
Carla Walker was found dead in a Fort Worth culvert at just 17, a violent killing no one has ever answered for until now.
In 2020, investigators tested DNA taken from Walker's clothing and matched it to 77-year-old Glen McCurley. Horribly enough, McCurley was actually considered a suspect back in the 70s, but a past polygraph test cleared him of suspicion. He was sentenced to life in prison and died in 2023. The Chameleon Killer. Terry Rasmussen earned the moniker Chameleon Killer not because he blended in, but because he went by a number of different aliases.
Bob Evans was an alias, along with Curtis Mayo Kimball, Gordon Jensen, Jerry Markerman, or Lawrence William Vanner. They were all used by this man, Terry Rasmussen, a divorced father of 4 from the Southwest.
While Rasmussen has only been convicted of 1 murder, experts believe he committed at least 5. Many peg him as the man behind New Hampshire's Bear Brook murders of the late 1970s, which encompassed the deaths of 4 girls, including Rasmussen's daughter.
Just didn't disappear off the face of the earth without a name or an identity.
He died before he could be tried for their deaths. He is also thought to have slain his girlfriend Denise Bowden in 1981. Finally, he did away with his wife, Eunsoon Jun, in 2002, and it was for this crime that he was finally arrested and imprisoned. He died in High Desert State Prison in 2010.
Curtis Kimball.
Curtis Kimball. Or Gerald
Mockerman?
Mockerman, right.
Ring a bell?
No.
BTK.
I have many, what I call them, projects.
And this morning, authorities believe 78-year-old Dennis Rader, the infamous BTK serial killer, may be responsible for even more deaths.
Having given himself the famous nickname BTK, Dennis Rader was active for many years within the general Wichita area, killing at least 10 people between 1974 and 1991.
He confessed to 10 murders almost 2 decades ago. He was known as BTK, a name he gave himself, short for Bind, Torture, Kill. He is currently serving life sentences at a maximum security facility in Kansas. And now there is new evidence that may connect the infamous BTK serial killer to additional murders.
And he might have gotten away with it were it not for his own hubris. Despite the high body count, police were unable to solve the crimes, and the trail was cold by 2004. But it was then that BTK began communicating with the media, and in 2005, he sent a floppy disk to Wichita's KSAS-TV. Investigators found metadata within the disk with the words Christ Lutheran Church and a word modification made by Dennis. A simple Google search found that one Dennis Rader was president of the church council, and the rest is now history.
Because I was trying to catch you.
David Zanstra.
A pastor charged with the killing of an 8-year-old girl in Delaware County decades ago is back in Pennsylvania tonight.
In July 2023, an 83-year-old retired minister named David Zanstra was arrested and charged with murder. The case went all the way back to 1975. It was August of that year when a young girl named Gretchen Harrington disappeared in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. 2 months later, her body was found by a jogger. Zanstra was responsible but played innocent, even calling the police to report the missing child when Harrington's dad approached him for help.
David Zanstra is, ladies and gentlemen, a monster. He is every parent's worst nightmare.
Zanstra then moved south, leaving his crime in the rearview mirror. That is, until 2023, when investigators received new information and traveled to Georgia to interview Zanstra. The retired minister finally confessed to and was charged with the decades-old crime.
He's going to have to find out what the God he professes to believe in holds for those who are this evil to our children.
The Long Island serial killer. One of the most infamous cold cases of our time was the Gilgo Beach killings. Dating back to 1996, a man did away with at least 10 people and dumped their remains in the Gilgo Beach area of Long Island.
Now, there were 10 sets of remains, all told, found along that area of Gilgo Beach. It had long been a dumping ground for bodies.
In December 2010, the remains of 4 women were found, and they were dubbed the Gilgo 4. Just a few months later, investigators found 6 more sets of remains, bringing the body count to 10. The case was extensively studied until July 2023, when a Manhattan architect named Rex Heuermann was arrested and charged with killing 3 of the Gilgo 4.
He's been charged in the deaths of 3 women, and he is the prime suspect in the death of a 4th. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was found right with the other 3.
And so it seems that 27 years after the death of the first victim, the mystery of the Gilgo Beach killings may have been solved.
It's not clear that Heuermann's going to be linked to all 10 sets of human remains, but it's a good bet, Kira, that prosecutors are going to move forward, charging him with the death of Maureen Brainerd Barnes.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The Golden State Killer.
New details of the rigorous investigation that detectives say brought down the Golden State Killer more than 40 years after his alleged killing spree began.
The Visalia Ransacker. The Night Stalker. Earons. The Golden State Killer. Whatever you want to call him, Joseph James DeAngelo is a nasty man. DeAngelo was active throughout California between 1974 and 1986, committing over 100 burglaries and killing at least 13 people. He was also known to have quite an ego, often taunting both his victims and the police with threatening phone calls. It wasn't until 2018 that DeAngelo was finally arrested, having been caught via the modern-day magic of genetic genealogy. He was sentenced to life in prison on August 21, 2020, 46 years after his crime spree began, and at the age of 74.
And I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt. Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the idea of criminals walking among us scare you? Let us know in the comments below.
All right, Larry, your prints came back.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.